Well, hey, y'all, and welcome to the Scrappy Piano Teacher Podcast. My name is Jacqueline Morozic, and I am incredibly delighted to have you join me today. Also, be sure to subscribe because apparently this is something I'm supposed to be reminding you all of every episode. I just can never remember that. So if you subscribe now, then it doesn't matter if I forget to remind you. So do that right now. And yes, before we go any farther, I know my voice sounds a little rough. I have been sick. My son went to camp and he brought home this souvenir of germs. It was very nice of him. And anyway, so we're all getting over it. So today you're going to get the slightly raspy, extra scrappy edition of the Scrappy Piano Teacher Podcast. We're just going to roll with it. It's all good. All right. So in real time, as I'm recording this, we are gearing up for school to start. In the spirit of gearing up for school, I know most all of us are getting our ducks in a row. And a popular topic of discussion in my groups has been registration fees. And they sound simple enough, right? Like, why should we talk about them? But we need to talk about them. Here's why I think that registration fees definitely deserve more thought. For a very long time, I barely gave them any thought at all, like at all. My process was pretty much this. I picked a number that sounded decent. I put it in the policy. I collected it in August. It was the same number for years. And when I say years, like at least a decade. And then, I just moved along with my life. And when I say that I did that for a long time, I mean something like 2 decades of long time. Yes. It was the same number for about 10 years. But before that, it was a ridiculously low number for 10 years. So we can all just agree that maybe I needed a little bit of help. But what I did not realize was that the registration fees come with a lot more questions than I even bothered to ask. I should have been thinking about what the fee was actually paying for, how I arrived at the number, where the money would go once I collected it, and whether charging it upfront was really the best option. Instead, I was basically saying, well, this number sounds official enough. Let us slap it on there and call it a day. Looking back, I remember somewhat thinking, should I look more into this? Why am I doing this number? I remember going through that thought process. And then I also remember being like, I don't know. I don't even know where to look. I don't even know who to ask. And so I just kind of let it go. Today, I want to talk to you about registration fees, but I'm not here to convince you that every teacher needs one or that maybe you need to eliminate one. We are all super different. Fees are not a one size fits all kind of thing. We serve different communities, we include different things, and we structure our tuition in different ways. So I wouldn't say that there's one way to do things. I think it is your way. And I just want you to do it your way a little more honestly with yourself. Most importantly, does your registration fee have a job? That idea that the fee needs a job took me forever and a day to understand. A registration fee should not simply be a number copied from another teacher because $75 sounds great. Sounds official. Sure. Sounds good. It should not exist because someone maybe at a conference said professional studios charge one, and now you feel like you need to get with the program or you're missing out or you're doing something wrong or something like that. And it should not be a vague annual contribution to the general survival of your studio. But before we can decide what to do with the money, we first need to figure out how much the fee should actually be. This is where I think a lot of teachers get stuck. We know there are expenses involved in running a studio. Duh, right? We also know that most other teachers charge a fee. We may even know that $75, $25, $100. Does that sound normal? I don't know. Maybe, probably. But even if it does normal mean accurate for you? No, not necessarily. So a much better starting point is to look back at your previous year and think about what caught you off guard. Where did you suddenly find yourself scraping money together? Which expense was much higher than you expected? What did you include for families without realizing how much it was costing you? So maybe it was recital. Maybe you like to pay for recitals. You don't charge separately because you want recital participation to feel like part of the studio experience. Maybe it's part of the value of being a member of your studio. And that is wonderful. I applaud that. But that does not mean that the recital is free for you to produce. I think we all know that. Think about the venue, the programs, decorations, refreshments, awards, equipment, whatever it is you need to provide. And you add up what you spent and divide that total by the number of students who participated or benefit from the event. And that's going to give you an average recital cost per student. By the way, I do have a free recital calculator at scrappypianoteacher.com/resources that can help you with this, because recital expenses have a sneaky little habit of multiplying when nobody is paying attention. So feel free to use that. Look back at expenses. Now is a really great time to do it and really reflect on that. Or maybe your bigger expense was books and materials. Maybe you like to provide all that for your students. Or maybe it's just materials. Maybe you have them order books and you send them a link. But either way, I know that you're having materials at your studios. Let's say books in this example. I'm going to use books. So instead of estimating that books probably cost, $10, $20, however much per student, they all kind of vary. We all know that. But go back and look at the actual numbers. Like, don't just do it in your head. Like, get it on paper. Pull up your receipts, Amazon orders, music store purchases, however you track those expenses, and add up what you spent, then divide it by the number of students that you served. I was helping a teacher with her policies earlier this summer, and when she really looked at the numbers in this particular situation with her books, she realized she was probably spending about twice the amount of her entire registration fee on books alone. And she was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And it was a huge eye-opener for her. And she was not slightly underestimating the cost. She was losing money on something she had promised to include. Oh, and guess what else counts? Your administrative costs count too. Maybe you spend a ton of time doing admin, like hours per week. Or maybe you use studio software that helps automate a lot of that admin work that you would do. Maybe you're like, I can't do this admin work anymore. I'm going to do studio software. So that's reduced your workload by automating the registration, communication, scheduling, and billing. That is great, but you are still paying for the software. You may also be paying a transaction or a payment processing fees, like with Stripe or credit card or PayPal or whatever. And yes, those fees may be tax deductible, and those fees are a heck of a lot more affordable than paying an assistant. It's still money leaving the business. And your time matters as well. So think about how many hours you spend updating your records, building the schedule, communicating with parents, just all the things. All right, so now once you have identified the expenses and what you want to include in the registration fee, you can have the next step, which is figuring out what they cost per student. So for me, for example, what is included in my registration fee is books. I provide the books for my students for the whole year, plus some supplemental. Now, if they do anything bigger, which is more expensive, or they lose their books, that kind of thing, then they have to pay for it. And I'm very clear about that. My registration fee also includes 2 recitals, and it also includes my administrative work. Okay, so you need to identify what it is you want to include in that registration fee. And then you want to identify the expenses, and then you want to make the calculation and come up with a number. And don't cringe at that number, because I bet that most of you do this and are like, my goodness, I am not charging my students that much. That is way too much money. I can't do that. The cost of inflation is just not nice. I can't do that. And it's like, hello, you're having to deal with inflation too. You're having to deal with the cost of living as well. And you're trying to run an efficient business. That number that you're looking at, that is the most accurate for you. So stick with it and have confidence behind it. And just, if they argue, just be like, well, Jackie told me to. And you can blame me. It's okay. I'm cool with it. I have thick skin. Let's suppose that your annual expenses total $2,000 and you expect to serve 40 students. So 2,000 divided by 40 gives you $50 per student. Now let's say books and materials average $25 per student. Add the $50 in shared expenses to the $25 in individual costs, and you're going to arrive at $75 annual fee. That number came from somewhere, like it actually existed. So this is eliminating that choosing the number from midair and just slapping it on your policy. Now your number came from somewhere. Are we good with that? I think we're good. And please do not hear me say $75 and assume that this is the official Jaci Scrappy piano teacher approved registration fee. That was just an easy number for math. Okay. Don't be like, well, Jackie said $75. I didn't. I want you to do it yourself. I'm not especially concerned with the number that you choose. I care that you understand where it came from. So here's what I want you to do. after this episode, I really want you to open a spreadsheet, notebook, the back of an envelope. I love doing things on back of envelopes, by the way. My husband's always like, why? Why are there envelopes everywhere? I'm like, well, they're free paper. I don't know, whatever works for you. And create 3 columns. And the first column lists everything you want your annual fee to cover. And the second column, write what you actually spent on each item last year or your best realistic estimate for this coming year. Maybe do both. Maybe look at everything that you spent last year and then what you predict you're going to do this year. Maybe it might change. Maybe studio numbers changed, or maybe you're like, I spent too much, whatever. Do your best on this, okay? In the third column, decide whether that cost belongs to one student individually or whether it's shared across the whole studio. Add up the shared costs and divide that number by the total number of students you expect to teach. Then add the average individual costs per student. So that number is going to give you your starting point. I'll put this all in the show notes. I'll put like a little formula because I know it's kind of hard when you're listening to a podcast and you're like, what did she say? Anyway, I'll put that in there. I think you guys get it though. But I love this because you're getting so much freedom here with your studio. Remember, you are the CEO. Look at you. Look at you, boss babe, boss boy. So impressive. Okay. It gives you so much freedom because you get to decide what belongs in tuition, what you want to subsidize yourself, what makes sense for your families. And now you're making that decision with real information instead of just pulling a number out of thin air. A few things to think about before you finalize it. Once you have an initial amount, step back and just make sure that the structure makes sense. Think about whether the fee is going to cover the entire cost of something or only part of it. Example, I was saying earlier how I cover the books in my studio, which I do. I cover all the books and supplemental music, but I do not cover the celebration series from the Royal Conservatory of Music. I almost messed that up. The RCM. I love it. I absolutely love the celebration series. I think most of you probably know what I'm talking about. It's a little bit more expensive, and the majority of my students do not use this because they're just not there yet. Or maybe it's just not something that I think will fit them the best. So that is very clear in my policy that I do not cover that, and I don't cover anything lost or if it's an excessive amount, that kind of a thing. So that's something that I'm just trying to say, like, make sure you're clear about that. Okay, so let's go back. We're deciding the number. We feel good about the number. We're super, super happy with that. Yes, great number. Now we're twiddling down the specifics of what's included and what's not and where that gray area might be. So we're going to make it super clear for everyone. And then we're going to think about all the little like nuances, all the weird stuff that could happen just to kind of cover your tush. All right. Now let's decide how the families will pay. Let's say that you have done the math and landed on $75. I'm just going to stay on this $75. You know what it covers. You know the amount. You know it's realistic for your studio. You're happy with it. Now you're going to decide how families are going to pay it. And the most straightforward option is collecting the full amount up front. I think most people like to do it in August right now. You send out the registration fee. The fee is due in August. And once it is paid, the student space is secured for the year. I think that happens with most people. And I think that is completely fair. And I think it is very easy to understand. I've done it for years. Another option, and this came up in a workshop that I had earlier this summer, and that is to spread the fee evenly across monthly tuition. So think of it as a $75 annual fee divided over 12 months, which is $6.25 per month. That's going to be added on to their even billing, all right, or their auto pay. So they pay the same annual total. The difference is simply whether they pay it all at once or in smaller pieces throughout the year. And I started thinking about this after this was brought up in the workshop. So I did something that I do not recommend to do. And I offered it as an option to my families. I'm letting them choose. Do you want to pay it up front? Or do you want to do it in combination with your monthly payment? Because here's the thing. As a parent, when all 3 of my kids are at the house, so 2 of my kids are gone, they're graduated, they have flown the nest. But when I had all 3 of the kids in the house, I was paying registration fees in August out and September out the wazoo. I mean, it was registration for sports. We were homeschoolers, so we belonged to all these different co-ops and all these different things, and they needed their money to like secure the locations to rent them out. So I was thinking about this and I'm like, you know what? That is true. There are so many parents that are having to pay all kinds of registration fees. So maybe this might alleviate a little bit of that pressure for these parents. Going back to my little experiment that I don't recommend doing. I really do recommend doing just one or the other because it's less for you to track. But I did it. I gave them the option. So far, 85% of my studio has chosen to roll the fee into tuition. I found that really, really interesting. I assumed that more people would want the lower monthly payment and would rather pay the fee upfront and get it over with. Now, my studio population may look very different from yours. I live in a very suburban, mostly middle-class area. In many of my studio families, both parents work, and for the most part, they're fairly comfortable. You know, they're not being extravagant by any means, but they're doing okay. And I think that context really, really matters here. And this was one small experiment from one small studio, This is not scientific research. And I am not claiming that 85% of every studio would make the same choice. I just simply found it interesting that so many families preferred a slightly higher amount payment over another larger charge in August. And let me tell you something, I jacked up my tuition this year too. So not only is my tuition higher anyway, but now it's even higher for them because they're adding that registration fee. I just think that's really interesting. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, what if the student quits in the middle of the year and then they still owe me part of the registration fee? That's okay. I mean, it's not okay that they're quitting, but this is how I am making sure that I get my money. They have a form that they have to fill out 30 days before they quit. So they have to give me a 30-day notice, but it doesn't count until they fill out the form. And on the form, it tells them that they understand that the remaining balance of that registration fee still needs to be paid along with the last month. And then I will give them the amount of that. So that is my workaround. The other teachers that seem to do it don't seem to have a problem. So it's just something to think about. I'm not telling you one way or the other is better. I mean, I don't know. What do I know? Only you know. So, or maybe you don't know. Just try it. Just see what you think. Okay. We figured out how much the registration fee is going to be. We really settled on all the fine print. Now the money needs a protected place. We need to talk about what happens after the money enters the business. So now the money's here. Yes. Money, money, money. I can't hit that high note with my voice. Money. I'll try it again when my voice comes back. Anyway, knowing the purpose of your fee, the work that we've done, is great. It's super important, but it really doesn't help very much. If the money lands in your regular checking account, it gets absorbed into your everyday spending and is never seen again. So that was my problem. I had a business account, but I was transferring those fees right on over to my personal account. What's even worse is if you just have one account, you're not going to be able to track it. You're going to spend it the way that you're not wanting to. I had given the fee a purpose in my policy, kind of, but I had not given the money a protected place in my business. And yeah, if you're wondering if I'm about to bring up profit first again, you get a gold star because I can't seem to not talk about it because it's so good. It's so good. You better believe that I am. So just as a little quick refresher, the basic idea behind profit first is that the money receives a specific job before general spending has a chance to take over and consume it. The money goes into your account. A percentage is definitely going to go to you. So you're going to ship that on off to yourself. And then the remaining money, you're going to have different percentages that's going to go to different accounts, your different buckets. I just want you guys to know that I don't think every teacher needs to have 14,000 buckets. You don't need 14,000 separate bank accounts with aesthetically pleasing, charming little cute titles. The system can be as simple or as detailed as your brain can reasonably maintain. The important part is separating the money intended for future expenses before it becomes ordinary operating cash. So let's go back to my $75 example. By the way, we're not going to use the registration fee for profit. That is the difference. This is all registration. This is going to your business. Let's say $25 is going to be meant for books and materials. It's going to go into that account. gone. $20 is going to be for recital expenses. $15 is for instrument maintenance, the thing that I always forget to budget. I'm going to change that this year. And then the final $15 is going to support software printing. Maybe I need to order paper, maybe I need toner, other materials. So when the money arrives, I'm going to I'm going to just send them where they need to go. And I will say also, the way that I make it work is I do it immediately. I don't wait. I don't just like let the money sit there because then I buy a skirt or something. So I distribute it right away. As you look at your own registration fee, start with real numbers. Think about what your studio spent last year, which expenses caught you off guard, and what you genuinely want the fee to cover. Calculate the average cost per student, choose a payment structure that makes sense, and decide where the money will live after it arrives. Then ask yourself whether it will still be there when the expense finally shows up. Your registration fee does not need to look like mine. It does not need to look like that amazing teacher down the street. You might be considered the amazing teacher down the street, by the way. Let's not forget that. It does not need to be $75 just because that's the example I use. It just simply needs to be accurate, intentional, and given a real job. And when you discover that your current fee is not doing what you thought it was doing, that it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's all good. Better information is going to give you something useful to work with. All right, my fabulous, amazing, talented, gifted, hardworking teacher friends, thank you so much for hanging out with my raspy little voice today. Head over to www.scrappypianoteacher.com if you want to subscribe to the newsletter. I've got lots of cool things. Guess what? I have something fun coming up on August 14th at 1 Eastern time. I'm going to do a free Scrappy Circle. Yay! A free Scrappy Circle. Guess who's joining me? Eric Branner. That's right. The man, the myth, the legend. He will be joining me, and we are taking any questions about business ahead of time. So go on to scrappypianoteacher.com/Scrappy Circle and RSVP. And then in the RSVP, you can list your question. You can look at that ahead of time. And I did ask him to do a little demo of the new Fonz. How Fonz is now Make Music Studio. There have been some changes. So I said, hey, why don't you show us? Because I think a lot of people have looked at it in the past and you might be curious about what it is. So it'll be a super short demo. And then afterwards, if we have time to chat, we will bring coffee, your tea, electrolytes, anything else. I don't judge. And it would be wonderful to see you. And then the last thing is the Profit First cheat sheet at a glance. I have that. If you need it, that's at www.scrappypianoteacher.com/resources. That is free. All right, guys, until next time, keep teaching, keep learning, and remember, make your studio work for you. See you later. Bye.